Stay sharp. Incoming.
You never learn, Masters.
Hello Avengers, in today's video I'm going to talk to you about the battery effect. Now that you have leveled up not only your XP level but also your power level, I'm going to talk to you about how to play with status effects to make your combat even more effective through gear and even your skills. So the important thing is that the battery effects increases your overall damage when you combine a status effect that's positive with a negative one. This means that you need to apply a positive status effect and a negative status effect. The positive status effects are Cosmic, PIM, and Plasma. The negative status effects are Gamma, Cryo, and Shock. Now to explain this better, I'm going to use Hawkeye. Hawkeye can create the battery effect not only through his gear, but also with his skills abilities. So first off, we have the Night Storm Arrow Heroic. You can make this a Plasma status effect with the Fire Devil specification. You can make it a Cryo status effect with Hailstorm. And you can make it a Shock status effect with Iron Surge. Keep in mind that's 2 negatives and 1 positive has a choice for this specific heroic ability. Then, when it comes to his ult, you can make it do a shock status effect, which is a negative. That means if we want to make the battery effect with only using his heroics, we're gonna have to use Night Storm Arrow as a plasma. This is because the ultimate can only do shock status effect with the Twin Talons specification. That means that it will produce a negative status. So we're gonna need a positive status with the other heroic if we want to make it effective. And the only positive status effect that Night Storm Arrow can do is Fire Devil, which applies the plasma status. So with just those 2 heroics combined, you create a battery effect, which will create much more damage. This is a great start for you if you want to make a build for Clint that's mainly using his heroics. Now we're going to talk about doing the battery effect with his power attack. The power attack is called Bag of Tricks. The important thing to know about Bag of Tricks is that it combines multiple types of arrows from Clint's arsenal. It uses a split shot arrow, the tripwire cluster arrow, and the pulsar arrow. Now what we want to do is we want to apply status effects to these arrows so we can create a battery effect with them. So I'm gonna go here now to my gear. For the split shot arrow to have a status effect, you will need to get a gear piece on the melee slot. That's a sword on the logo for Clint. You will see it on your gear pack here that says split shot arrow inflicts shock damage. Now I chose to be shock damage, but you can use a positive or a negative if you want to. This is not specifically, but for this example I'm doing, I went with a negative with shock for the split shot. But now that I have a negative with the split shot arrow, I need a positive status effect on my cluster tripwires and on my pulsar arrows. And that's where we move on to our range slot with the arrows. And with this particular gear piece I chose, you can see that cluster arrows deal cosmic damage and pulsar arrows deal cosmic damage. So that means when I'm doing the Bag of Tricks, the first move is a split that will do the shock negative damage. After that is followed by a cluster arrow move and a pulsar arrow move that will apply cosmic. And on the last move, it does another split arrow, which will apply more shock damage. And so then I will have the battery effect. Now this is just an example with this specific status effect, but you can make them the other way around. You can make Cosmic the split shot arrow and make the cluster and pulsar arrow shock instead, or with other status effects as well. The important thing is that you have a positive and a negative going together applied on an enemy. Now there will be range gear that you can get that only does one specific arrow, the status effect. Personally, I recommend that you look for one that applies the status effect to both cluster and pulsar if you really want to make a solid battery effect with Bag of Tricks. Additionally, if you want to take the ability of Bag of Tricks even further, you can try your luck at the Mega Hive and get this exotic piece called Operative's Armor. This exotic piece gives you 2 more arrow shots of split shot arrow. That means that your shock status effect will be even more effective with this piece. Now it's not necessary to create the battery effect, but if you want to take this build even further, then it's a great way to do so. As far as the bow, you can experiment with a lot of things. Personally, I went with this piece I got in the Hives, where I get an extra shaft of my heroic 9-storm arrow. So for the earlier idea I mentioned to you about heroics build, this gear piece is great because you'll get an extra charge to apply your plasma tornado. But you can experiment with other bows that offer just overall great damage buffs that can be very helpful when you're applying the battery effect. Now if you're wondering about minor artifacts, I don't particularly use any very specific minor artifacts. What I do with minor artifacts is that I apply a minor artifact that helps me on specific stats that I'm lacking of. For example, this one strictly to my Valor, which boosts a lot my heroic rating. Since I want to use a lot my heroics for my battery effect, I make sure that my stats for it are even better overall with this ISO. Then on my second slot I have a precision minor artifact. This increases your overall range rating, which will help a lot your damage for your Bag of Tricks. Lastly is the Mayor Artifact. Mayor Artifact is more of a choice. Personally, I prefer the Sacred Stone because it provides a really good damage buff when it's activated, even though it's very short limited. If you want to make an impact when during a boss fight or during some really heated enemies, it'll come in very handy. Plus, if you do have damage buffs in other of your gear pieces, like the bow slot for example, this will increase overall that damage boost. The other option you could do is the Tachyon. Tachyon is great for increasing your overall status effects and will help overall for your battery build. The only thing is, it won't create a huge impact, but it's still a nice boost overall. And if you're lacking a little bit on melee and heroic rating, it can give you a little bit of a boost. It's not a game changer, but it's another piece that you can try. And lastly is a Vortex Transponder. This one is great if one of your chosen status effects is PIM. It will boost your overall particle PIM damage, as well as have Hank PIM shooting some PIM particles himself that will apply in just one shot a full PIM status effect. Unfortunately, it would not be helpful for your heroics because none of your heroics do particle effect. But if you're looking for a different kind of build with your Bag of Tricks with the PIM, you could really explore this one. So that's it for creating the battery effect with the different status options. So I hope this guide helps you a little bit more on how to play around more with your gear pieces for different characters. I specifically chose Hawkeye for this one because he has more ways to apply status effects, and I think he's a great way to learn how that system works, because you can apply them with just using your heroics. You don't have to focus on your gear pieces yet. So with the heroics he has, you can play around with it and understand it, and then take it further into the gear system with him and other characters. And just showing you a lot of ways how you can explore creating your characters. Rather than specifically telling you this is the build that you have to do, I'd rather want to explain to you how the system works so you can play around with it and make your own personal builds at the end of the day. So I hope this guide was very helpful for you guys, and see you next time, Avengers.